Hey, we're live, and I'm still putting some of these pieces together here. 1 second, so you can hear me better. We get to hook up the lav mic, as we're still in transition with the studio space. You know, it's really weird. It's like my cap is actually green, and yeah, there we go. All right, that's more like it. Get some real color in here. Excuse me while I make a light adjustment here. Okay. Here we go. We're intact, at least as much as we can be. Welcome to the show. Thank you for your patience. And I think we'll probably go for maybe about an hour today. I don't want to spend like a huge amount of time, but every time I say that, I wind up spending a huge amount of time. So, Chataria, a general greeting to all of you. Thank you for being here. And so, you know, the news du jour obviously is still this plane crash in DC, which took place on the 29th, so a mere 2 days ago. And it just keeps getting stranger and stranger by the moment, like on so many different levels. And I'm gonna try to unpack as much as I can with what tools I have available, like at my disposal, right? And I think there's multiple things going on here. Like, it's not just one thing, right? People talk about how this is some sort of ritualized event, and on the surface, it has that vibe, right? I mean, when you think about how they changed the runway from runway number one, and we've looked at this before, and I think I still might have the graphic up here. So let me just throw the graphic up here, just to remind you of the major change in the approach of the flight. Okay, so this is, let's see, it's not it. Where is it? Hold on. Separate. That I have there for a reason. There we go. All right. So this is a graphic that we have used previously to talk about this. Right here. Okay, so this is the runway that the American eagle, which is again a very interesting symbol, which of course that hasn't been lost on many people. Right, this was the runway that it was supposed to go on. Right here, right there, right. That was the approach. And then they were told to alter their approach to go to runway 33. Now, I find the naming of the runway at least mildly interesting. So if this is runway 1, potentially this is runway 2. Well, why wouldn't this be runway 3? It's actually runway 33. which of course is the degree in Freemasonry where supposedly all is revealed. And your participation and consent in that world takes on a very different kind of commitment. And many people have talked about what that might actually look like and incur. And I don't want. I didn't. So we could have a separate show with that, right? But something drastic happens when you hit that 33rd degree. Like you are deep in the club. I've met some 32nd degree Masons. And honestly, I had this one conversation with this one guy who seemed pretty cool, and he told me, yeah, I joined Freemasonry because I thought it was going to give me some, esoteric insight into the world. And he says, this guy was a 32nd degree Mason in Las Vegas. And he said, I have to tell you, I'm a bit disappointed that I haven't learned more, whatever that means. And I don't know if every lodge is the same. It's not like, that's really not a part of my world, right? But clearly this guy was coming to me as an astrologer for answers that Freemasonry wasn't providing for him. Now, I will tell you that he shared with me a couple of events in his life that were pretty tragic and kind of heavy. And causation doesn't always match correlation. But if you were looking at like 32nd degree involvement of Freemasonry and your life kind of going in a couple of very shitty directions, maybe you might want to rethink that. I'm just throwing that out there. Like maybe, causation does equal correlation. So getting back to this, right, if the plane had stayed here and simply kept its approach on runway 1, this does not happen, right? This collision doesn't happen. But because this plane has to reroute and come into this runway, which is much shorter, by the way, as you can see. And I've made the observation that this does look a little Masonic. You get a little compass squarey stuff. We all know that Washington is a complete occult city. It's everything that's laid out is like it's like this esoteric kind of circuit board when you look at Washington D.C. And there have been people who have done incredible work just dissecting all of it, right? So this would not be something that would be too out of whack. So the plane is making a major alteration. Now, if it stays on runway 1, there's a really good chance this does not happen. Okay? Now, one of the things that has been sorted out here is that when you look at the zigzag pattern of the PAC-25 Blackhawk, it's much clearer on the video, the night vision cam, that the helicopter does not do this. The helicopter is actually on a beeline for the jet. On a beeline. We've seen it on a beeline. And it accelerates. And here's another important point. At this height, or at this point, this plane is at 400 feet. And it is descending at a speed of 145 miles per hour. And you basically have to maintain a speed between like 145 and 150 to actually get enough resistance to land the plane. If you go too far below 140, you'll drop out of the sky. If you go too far above 150, you'll be accelerating too fast and you will not be able to stop in time. That is like the sweet spot for landing a plane 145, 150. So when you are landing on a plane, that's the speed that you're going. And the closer you get to the runway, of course, you're going to decelerate more. You're going to hit those air brakes because you have just a limited amount of time to stop. Okay. The Blackhawk helicopter is not allowed to travel over 200 feet. And these are details that are just emerging. So now you have a helicopter that is flying 200 feet above the airspace that it is supposed to be flying at. How does that happen? Right? How does that happen? How does this plane get rerouted? Why? We still, and now again, I'm trying to find as much information as possible. I'm going to play some stuff in a minute to kind of blow your mind. But we still have not found the reason why this plane was diverted. This is an incredibly long runway. Now, if you look at the video, there is another plane. You can kind of see another plane in the general vicinity. Now, I don't know if that plane was scheduled to hit runway 1, and maybe that's why this plane was rerouted. But if you look at the distance between on the runways, there's a hell of a lot more runway here. And apparently this plane was taxiing a bit, from what I understand. And then they said, okay, well, we're going to reroute you to runway. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Runway 33. Okay. So this plane comes in, and then we have the Blackhawk 200 feet above where it's supposed to be, going faster than the jet. Because if this is just pure, and I'm not an aeronautical genius, right? But it doesn't take a genius to figure out that if the plane is going 145 miles per hour and the helicopter is going 145 miles per hour, starting at the distance that is the 8-second interval from when there's some recognition of the pilot on board the helicopter and the actual crash. If you do the math at 145 to 145, it's going to miss or slightly miss this plane. Right? It's going to miss it, right? Because you can see it accelerate. It is going faster. So if it was matching, or let's say it was at 125 miles per hour, it's going to miss the plane. It's going to completely miss the plane. It has to be going faster than the plane in order to hit it right on the nose and basically T-bone bullseye. All right, so let's just go over this again. Pat 25 was 200 feet above the airspace that's allowed for a Blackhawk helicopter. That's it, 200 feet. That's why when you see them, they're always low. They're kind of menacing, right? They're always low. And the reason why they're low is because they don't want them to be involved in higher levels of air traffic. It's pretty simple. All right, so that's that. I just wanted to establish this and establish this whole idea of the rerouting, which of course gets it into that magical number 33, which seems very ritualistic. And then we have the Blackhawk literally downing. It's like this weird bird thing, right? This aerial thing, which is very Aquarian, and Pluto and Aquarius, let's do the math, man, right? It's like death in the sky. Pluto represents death. Aquarius is the sky. And and then Mercury just kind of caught up a little bit, which is travel. And it's like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see this. I can kind of see the astro math on this. Does that mean we're going to have more air crashes? Yeah, probably. Probably. I don't think this is going to be the last air crash that you're going to hear about with Pluto and Aquarius. Again, death in the sky. I was sent this guy who did the brief video that at least 4 or 5 flights over the past 5 years or so, if they flew on either the 29th or the 11th, they crashed. And he's basically saying, don't fly on the 29th or the 11th. I'm not really sure about that, right? Like, how many flights are there across the globe, the world, wherever you want to call it, on the 11th and the 29th? A lot. I think we can say that with a fair amount of conviction that there are thousands of flights around the world on that day. Thousands. And so we have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that happened over about a 5-year period. Okay? Even if there is some degree of frequency and you add all those flights up on those days versus the actual crashes, the odds are still extremely high that you're going to board a plane that is headed for disaster. The odds are still in your favor that you're going to land safely. So I'm just bringing that up, right? I'm just bringing it up. But what's also interesting is that if you do look at 11 and you do look at 29 and you add 2 plus 9, you get 11. What is the 11th sign of the zodiac? It is Aquarius. What does Aquarius bring with it? Chaos, disorder, and it rules the air. So from like a numerological symbolic standpoint, I find that more interesting than the actual like number itself, because it could be in any given month, right? It could be July 11th. That's not an Aquarian month, but 11 is an Aquarian number. That's why the Twin Towers were so big. Like I said, that's why the Twin Towers were so symbolic, right? They were 2, but they were 11. And so that was an Aquarian, it was a Gemini Aquarian ritual, right? And then you have one tower to rule them all. It is destruction of, this is all chaos, duality magic. The destruction of the Twin Towers, the resolution of duality, and one tower to rule them. Anyway, we're getting a little off path here. I want to play you something that somebody sent to me, which gets into some of this high strange that we're talking about. And so I want to thank Final Free 999 for who is this? This is Teasel. Teasel sent this to me, and I'm gonna get into the Final Free 999 share. So I want you to watch this. This is really fascinating, and this is starting to get a lot of coverage here. This guy's done some stellar work, and I'm gonna bring this to your attention. Okay, so check this out. Okay, again, I want to thank Teasel for bringing this to my attention. So this is Into Thin Air, wild new info, American Airlines and Blackhawk mid-air collision. I'm gonna play you the video because it spells it out fairly well, but it raises a lot more questions than it does answers. Okay, so let me plug in so I can hear it with you. And if you haven't seen this already, this is really, really bizarre, and adds another layer to this kind of high strange that we're dealing with this air crash. Okay, here we go. So apparently I'm not getting any sound in the video, and I'm sorry because I'm getting sound. This is one of the beautiful things with StreamYard, is that StreamYard does sometimes fuck up the audio. So I got levels here, I got levels here, short of rebooting my computer. I can't do anything more. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is explain what the guy's saying. Okay, so what's happening here is that this helicopter is getting triggered by a transponder. Like its transponder gets triggered right in this area of Lawton Street. Okay. So this is what's happening, right? Something happens here, right over this area. And whatever happens in this area alters the flight path of the Pat 25 Blackhawk helicopter. This is what he's pointing out. And he says that the transponder getting activated happens somewhere between this house and this house in this tree line. This, by the way, is in McLean, Virginia. And McLean, Virginia is obviously a CIA town. These are all CIA suburban houses where you have lots of agents, operatives, people that are, part of the company. They're all living here. Right? You can go to any one of these houses and you're going to find somebody who either works directly for the CIA or maybe a contractor for the CIA or knows somebody who works for the CIA. This is where they live. Okay, this is McLean, Virginia. All right, so we keep going, right? And so what he has found out is that through Google Earth, right, this address on Lawton Street is blurred out. You can't see it. Every other address, every other house on Lawton Street is viewable through Google Earth, but not this one. So he's asking the question, why? And why is the transponder being activated over this area? Right? So he doesn't have any answers. And what he's doing here is he's asking Grok, what are the chances of this happening? And so he's going through what Grok's possibilities are. So the first one is the coincidence of the transponder activating directly over blurred out house could be significant, but without specific details or official reports linking the two events, it remains speculative. Okay. So he's just going through all these variables, right? Flight data and timing. If the transponder data aligns with the moment of the crash or shortly before, this could be a key piece of information for investigators. However, the activation of transponder over a particular point doesn't inherently imply direct cause or effect with the crash unless further evidence supports this stuff. Okay. So I also want you to look at this image, because this is what I was talking about. Like, so there was another plane in the vicinity. This happens all the time at Reagan. It is an extremely busy, heavily trafficked airport. And so then it begs the question, why the fuck are you doing a training simulation in a flight in this area? Apparently, there were also some other close calls that had happened earlier in the week, which it's starting to leak out, right? Now, the other thing that he brings up, and I've mentioned this before, is that particular version. Let me see if I can get back to the screen share. Yeah, for whatever reason, sometimes I'm absolutely looking at rebooting my streaming service connection. So here, let me bring this back. Okay, now you guys can see this, right? So this is what I was talking about. You can actually see another plane in the general vicinity. Why the fuck are they having these training flights over an area where it is heavily trafficked by commercial air flight? Okay, the other thing that he brings up, and so I had mentioned this before, and again, we have had no clue as to who was on the Blackhawk. I'm going to go over the passenger list of the plane, the plane in question. That particular Blackhawk is called a gold cap. Okay, there's a reason why it's called a gold cap. It's called a gold cap because it usually transports either somebody who is fairly high up in the military and or the government, and it could be a state official, right? So this is not your average Blackhawk helicopter. Now, we know that there were 3 people on board the Blackhawk helicopter, but we don't know who they are. We don't know who the pilot is, and we don't know who the other passengers were. So how many people do you need on a Blackhawk helicopter? I would say to actually pilot it, you probably need 2. All right, you need a pilot and you need a navigator. You probably need 2. If you're really good, the pilot is the navigator. But let's just say in this instance, you need 2. If it's a training flight, maybe the 3rd person on board is a flight instructor. But if that's true, then how did this helicopter get into a position where they're 200 feet above the altitude limit that they're supposed to be flying at? And why are they flying at a speed that eventually gets them to reach the nose of the American Airlines flight? Wouldn't a flight instructor have been, wouldn't a flight instructor have inserted themselves into that situation? Remember when you were learning how to drive a car, right? And if you are my age, your high school like helped you learn how to drive a fucking car. One of the teachers was your driving instructor, and they sat in the passenger seat and they had brakes installed in the passenger seat. So if for whatever reason you lost your shit, they could hit the brakes. That's what an instructor does. So if the third passenger was a flight instructor, well, that's a fail. And we believe that in order to pilot a Blackhawk, you might, like a plane, have a pilot and a co-pilot. What does a co-pilot do? Co-pilot kind of plays the role of a navigator, right? The pilot, looking around, dealing with what's in front, piloting the plane. The co-pilot becomes the navigator, handles information, communication, looks at the radar, takes over for the pilot if he wants to take a piss, right? Have coffee, whatever. Like, that's kind of the model. So if there's no flight instructor on that helicopter, then who's the third person? That is an important question. And again, it's the category of that particular Blackhawk. It's a gold cap. It literally has a gold ceiling on top, like a golden dome, to specify that somebody important is on that helicopter. So again, I'm in the same boat as Up in the Air, this guy that's put this together. He can't necessarily figure out why this happens specifically at that address. Now, if you go back, I think this is what, around 1990. Let me bring this up here. Okay, so this is one of the more famous plane crashes in modern history. And this is the plane crash of Ronald H. Brown. So I'm going to bring this up. The reason I'm bringing this up is because of the transponder issue. And we're going to look at a couple of other plane crashes here as well. Okay, so this is Ron Brown. Ron Brown was the head of the Democratic Party. He was a major player and helped Bill Clinton get elected. Bill Clinton, as a payback to Ron Brown, named him the United States Secretary of Commerce. Now, Ron Brown knew everything about Bill Clinton and the Clinton crime conspiracy family. Okay. So what does Ron Brown do? We're gonna, this talks about his rise through the Democratic Party. He's got all the connections. He becomes the head of the Democratic National Committee. Right. Ron Brown emerges as a major player. So he's rewarded by being the Secretary of Commerce. So his thing was bringing global trade together. Right. Clinton's highest priority was bolstering the economy and diplomacy, and Brown produced results. He led delegations of entrepreneurs, business people, and financiers to South Africa, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, Egypt, Russia, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Hong Kong, Ireland, India, and Senegal. He was leading a trade mission en route to Croatia when all the passengers died in a plane crash. Brown was involved in the Commerce Department trade mission controversy during his tenure. He had a nanny gate thing going on. You know, all these people have like shit in their back pockets all the time. They're compromisable. So let's get into this plane crash. On April 3rd, 1996, Brown was on an official trade mission, U.S. Air Force CT-43 modified Boeing 737. Brown and 34 other people, including New York Times Frankfurt bureau chief Nathaniel C. Nash, crashed into a mountainside to Croatia's Dubrovnik airport. The Air Force attributed the crash to pilot error and a poorly designed landing approach. Speculation about the crash included many government cover-ups and conspiracy theories, largely based on Brown having been under investigation by independent counsel for corruption. Okay. So you got Crazy Mafuni, Maxine Waters, they're the Black Caucus. They want to know what happened here. All right, I can tell you what happened. So this plane was headed to Croatia, and they switched the transponder. So the plane is lined up to land in Dubrovnik, right? Somebody put a transponder into the mountain range that this flight, U.S. Air Force CT-43, was now responding to. It thought that the runway ultimately was the mountain. This is what happened. They rigged this thing so the plane would fly into the fucking mountain. That's what happened. Now, how many times has the pilot on U.S. Air Force CT-43 flown into Dubrovnik? You have to remember, Croatia is just opening up. The amount of people that had experience flying into Croatia probably count on half your hand. And I guarantee you, right, that not one digit on half your hand is flying the damn plane. So he sold seats, right, on the plane. He sold these seats on the plane to basically, it's kind of like a graph thing. Like if you want to be on the plane and you want to go to Croatia and you want to start doing business in Croatia, you got to pay up, right? And then that money, it wasn't like, hey, let's just all go over there and see what kind of deals we can make, right? No, you are going to pay for the right to go to Croatia, and I will be the ambassador. I will represent Bill Clinton. I will represent the United States, and all the deals are going to go through me. We're kind of Joe Biden territory here. So they get the transponder signal and they crash into the mountain. Ron Brown, everybody on board is dead. So anything that was kind of hanging loose and messy with Ron Brown, don't have to worry about Ron Brown anymore. So what happens with that transponder in the same spot, not in the mountain, but there on Lawton Street? What is it directing that helicopter to do? And where is it going? That's the question. And we're just starting to put pieces together around this thing, which is bizarre. Okay, just bizarre. And the level of bizarreness is going to continue to grow. Trust me. Okay. Now, we don't have a passenger list for the helicopter. We do have an emerging passenger list for the flight. Okay. And we're going to take a look at some of those people. The most publicized of the people on board that flight are the Boston Ice Skating Club, which we're going to spend a fair amount of time looking at. Okay. All right. So this is a prayer vigil in Wichita, Kansas. This is where the flight in question originated from. I guess the skating club had just done a competition in Wichita. So let's go through the victims, right? First of all, it's the deadliest U.S. air crash since 2001. Among the passengers were members of the Skating Club of Boston. We're going to spend some time going down that rabbit hole. Who were returning from a development camp that followed the 2025 U.S. Figure Skating Championships in Wichita. So you have the skating championships, and then there's a developmental camp on the backside of that. Okay. Victims included teenage figure skaters Jenna Hahn and Spencer Lane, the teens' mothers, two Russian-born coaches, Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Namov, who won a 1994 World Championship in Paris figure skating. The victims also included a group of hunters returning from a guided trip in Kansas. We don't know who they are. 9 students and parents from Fairfax County, Virginia schools, and 4 steam fitters, members of steam fitters local in suburban Maryland. And here we go. And 2 Chinese nationals. Oh, all of a sudden, this just got a little more interesting, didn't it? Let's go over the people. And this is, I think there were 60 people on this flight. So this doesn't explain everything. Okay, so let's go through this, right? So you have teenage figure skaters, these 2, right? The mothers, that's 4. And then you have the other figure skaters, that's 6. Now, supposedly, there were 30 people who were part of that figure skating club who were on that flight. There were 60 people on the flight in general, right? Period. So now you have a group of hunters returning from a guided trip in Kansas. Where are they returning to? They're returning to Washington, D.C. Who are the hunters? Like, that would be an interesting look, right? So for the skaters, I'm not sure if they're going to stay in D.C. or they're there to transfer to a flight to Boston, which is where they're from. But these hunters, who are they? And not that it takes a huge amount of money to go hunting, but it's not cheap. You go on a hunting trip, you have some coin. All right. You got 9 students and parents from Fairfax County, Virginia schools. Okay, what were they doing there? Why were they in Wichita? And again, I'm not posing this question like it's some sort of grand conspiracy, but it's interesting. Why are they there? Why Wichita? Then you get the steam fitters. So we got 9, right? So we got 9 there. How many hunters? I don't know. Group? Let's say 6. That's 15. What do we have? We have 1, 2, 4, 6. All right. So we're up to maybe 16 and 6. That's 22. 4 steam fitters. The local, 24, and then you have the 2 Chinese nationals, 26. There are still 36 people that are not identified, right? Because remember, there were 60 people on this flight. And I don't know, maybe the hunters, maybe there's 10 hunters. But even if there's 10 hunters, we're still way below 6. I mean, for the hunters to make a difference, we'd have to be talking about 20 hunters. And usually that doesn't happen. 20 hunters is like It's like a tactical unit. It's not. To me, the two Chinese nationals are, I'm just going to highlight that right there. Who are they? Who are they? That's interesting. You know, we've just been going through this major controversy scandal with NVIDIA, DeepSeek, like all this shit. DeepSeek, of course, being connected to China, and how as a AI agent, right, it's like way more powerful and way cheaper than anything that OpenAI or NVIDIA has come up with. Is there a connection here? Question mark. I don't know. But if I was going to focus on a group that we know that was on the plane, because I do think there's another, there's a half the flight is not accounted for. I'd be looking at these two Chinese nationals and maybe the hunters. Like, who are the hunters? Are they just regular Joes? I don't think so. They don't feel like regular Joes. All right. Let's talk about the Boston skating club. Let's get into that. So there's 14 from the Boston skating club. That's what I thought. So even when you include 14, you go to the the 16 fitters. That's 20. The 9 Fairfax County children parents. That's 29. 2 Chinese nationals, 31. Let's say you have a max of 10 in the hunting party. That's 41. You're still 19 short. You're still 19 short of the 60, which is on the passenger list. Maybe 58 if you include the pilot and the co-pilot. So we still don't know the entirety of the passengers. All right, so the Boston Club. 2 teenage figure skaters, their mothers, and 2 former world champions who were coaching at a historic Boston club were among the 14 members of the skating community killed when American Airlines flight collided with armed helicopters. So we know that, right? These are the people. Okay. We came here because we needed to be together. Now, these people go back a long ways. This skating club, the Boston Skating Club, just to give you a historical context, has been around for a very long time. And it counts amongst its members some very influential figure skaters, historical figure skaters, including Nancy Kerrigan. So let's just go into a little bit of a look at the Boston Skating Club's been around since 1912. That's how old this thing is. 1912. Okay. Like many other skating clubs in North America, the skating club has many social and voluntary activities, blah, 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 blah. It's got to be one of the oldest. Founded in 1912, it is one of the oldest skating clubs in the United States and a founding member of the U.S. figure skating, the governing body for the sport. So this skating club is a hub. It's not just people that hang out and skate. It is really the sort of the tabula rasa of American figure skating, right? And what's interesting is that, of course, Boston is a city that plays a huge role in the story of the American Revolution, right? Okay. So let's take a look at some of the members. Tammy Albright, Sherwin Badger, Teresa Well Blanchard, Dick Button. Remember that name, Dick Button. Okay. Nancy Kerrigan. 2 significant names. We can go through all these other names. Some of them you'll probably know. Paul Wiley is fairly famous, right? And then you have the people that we just mentioned. Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Namov. They're all part of this. Right. So these are the kind of the historic Emmy Ma, kind of a famous skater, Emily Hughes, a famous skater. So this is where a lot of America's best skaters kind of train. Right? They're also connected to Theater on Ice Boston, Skating Academy, all this stuff. Right? Yes, I know. I know. So the Boston Skating Club is a big part of this story. Now, if we go onto Twitter, just this last week, right, something weird happened this last week. It was kind of right at the beginning of the week. And I'm going to show you what I'm referring to. And again, I don't have an explanation. I'm not saying that there's this weird conspiracy that is centered around this skating club. But I got to tell you, there is some fucking high strange that I want to take a look at. And the way that I want to look at it is not this sense that that it's connected in any meaningful way to what happened, right? Like, oh my God, we're taking out the best and the brightest of our skaters, right? There's something else going on here. Okay, somebody brought this up, and this is again really weird. I'm going to bring this into the conversation, and this is a very, very interesting point. Another variable you have to factor in. This is from Chaos Coordinator. Blackhawks have anti-collision systems. Hey, at Doug Burgum. Doug Burgum is set to be, the Secretary of Commerce? Is that right? It's time to discuss the sale of gyroscope technology by the Benchmark Black site in North Dakota. Under your oversight, critical components were sold to the CCP, where chipsets were reportedly altered and sent to Honeywell to be installed in our commercial and military aircraft. Shouldn't this be addressed? I would happily provide the evidence if anyone questions about this statement. What the hell is going on here? Now, all of a sudden, you got Doug Burgum, who is theoretically overseeing this company in North Dakota, who is now selling these critical components to the CCP. They alter them, they ship them, and they go to Honeywell to be installed in commercial military craft. Right? Like, what the fuck is going on here? Keep in mind, there are 2 Chinese nationals who we know nothing about that are on that plane, and there's about 24 other people that we know nothing about. Like, that's pretty wild, don't you think? That's like a kind of a major piece of the puzzle here. And if that's true, and it seemed to be true, then how many other of these component parts, the anti-collision systems, have been installed in our military and commercial aircraft? So are we at risk because Doug Burgum didn't clamp down on these companies doing these fucking deals with China, which has been going on for a long time? So we'll just look the other way here. Hey, yeah, you make some money, good. I'll make some money too. Right? So that's another thing we have to factor in here. It's another weird thread and piece of the puzzle. Okay, but there's more. I want to get back into this thing that happened. And I got to go back into my timeline so I can actually like connect with this. All right, so here's some more high strange. 3 days prior to the crash with the Blackhawk and this American Eagle, the Philadelphia Eagles posted a helicopter on the 5-year anniversary of Kobe Bryant's death from a helicopter crash. Like, that's weird, don't you think? That is really weird. And of course, then the Eagles defeat the Washington Commanders. And they're on to the Super Bowl. That's just more high strange. More high strange. Okay, so I'm going through my timeline because I need to just point this out. Give me 1 second here. Man, I spent a lot of time on Twitter. Maybe too much. Let's see. I'm going to find it. Just give me a minute. I'm going to find it. Okay, here it is, right here. Let me just show this. So this is January 29th. What happens on January 29th? It's the plane crash. And this happens on January 29th. Tanya fucking Harding says, here, I'll play this. Hopefully you can hear it.
Hey everyone, I am Tanya Harding and I am on X. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Happy New Year. Join me there and let's chat it up. Love you. God bless. Bye.
That's
hey everyone,
Tanya Harding.
Tanya Harding.
She jumps on X on January 29th, which is the day of this plane crash. And what do we know about Tanya Harding? Well, of course, we know a lot about Tanya Harding because she was the person that got her henchman to whack Nancy Kerrigan. And where's Nancy Kerrigan from? She's from the Boston Skating Club. Like, in what world does this make any fucking sense? Like, it's so bizarre. Okay, and it gets even more bizarre because one day after the crash, Dick Button, who is a major force in American skating, the guy that actually reported on the Harding Kerrigan scandal when Jeff Gillooly and Shane Stant whacked Nancy Kerrigan and tried to impair her from competing in the Olympics. He's the guy that's talking about it. Well, he passes away the day after this crash. It's fucking crazy, right? So now you have all these weird syncs going on with this Boston Skating Club, Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan, and then Dick Button. Now, Dick Button isn't just the guy who, here, let's go into his, this is his Wikipedia page. And, you know, he was like, he broke ground in terms of like men's skating. He's credited with having been the first skater to successfully land a double axel, the triple loop. He also invented the flying camel spin, which was originally known as the button camel. He brought increased athleticism to figure skating. You know, Dick Button is a pretty influential figure. right? So let's go through some of the Dick Button highlights here. Okay. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. He got he went to Harvard Law School, but he couldn't finish it. Then eventually he went back and he became a member of the bar. He was part of the Ice Capades, founder of Cannon Productions, blah, 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 blah. But there was a there was an event, if I'm not mistaken, where Button was. This is it. Oh, hold on, no. There was another crash of American skaters. This was, I think, back in the early 60s. And Button actually reported on that crash. And I'm trying to locate that. Okay. Because I think I'm pretty sure I saw this. I'm pretty certain that this occurred, unless I'm in a Mandela effect zone. But if you go down here, right, just look at this. His death occurred less than a day after several participants in the 2025 U.S. Figure Skating Championships, including skaters and coaches from the Skating Club of Boston, which Button had a lifelong association, were killed in a mid-air collision over Potomac. Like, how fucking weird is this? Right? You've got Tonya Harding showing up on the day of the crash. Hi, I'm back. The woman who perpetrated the hit on Nancy Kerrigan, who is from Boston and part of that skate club, who is now addressing the nation in tears. And then you've got Dick Button, a major figure in figure skating, who dies less than a day after this whole thing happens. And that's apart from all the other shit, right? We haven't even gotten into the supposed background of the pilot, who we don't even really know. There's all these murmurings that the pilot might be a DEI hire. There was this wild rumor that the pilot was transitioning. It was so wild that an actual Blackhawk pilot who was actually transitioning had to come out and say, that's not me. That's how weird this is. Yeah, I'm that person that people are talking about who is a Blackhawk pilot and who is transitioning, but I'm not that pilot. Like, how fucking weird can this get? I'm sure we're just starting to scratch the surface here in terms of weird. All right, there's some other stuff here I want to talk about. What the fuck is going on with the FAA and air traffic controllers? That's another part of the story. Okay, so I just quickly scanned, and I'm going to see if I can find it. I quickly scanned across this headline that the FAA was lowering the bar for people to become air traffic controllers if they were somehow diagnosed with a personality disorder. Wrap your head around that for a second. Just put that over there for a moment, okay? Like, okay, these personality disorders, that's discrimination. We can't discriminate against people with personality disorders when they apply to be air traffic controllers. Are you fucking kidding me? All right, just put that over there for a minute. This is on the record. So we can comment on this. I'm going to try to go back and find this thing. Okay, so this is on the record. One controller was doing 2 jobs on night of DC plane crash. What 2 jobs is that controller doing? A preliminary report suggests control tower staffing was inadequate when an American Airlines jet collided with a U.S. Army helicopter, plunging 67 people to their death in the icy Potomac below. That assessment was made by the FAA on Thursday, a day after the deadly crashes. Questions and conspiracies soar about who or what is to blame. The administration wrote that Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport's control tower staffing was not normal for the time of day and volume of traffic it was experiencing just before 9 p.m. Investigators concluded a single person was doing a job meant for 2, juggling the duty of monitoring helicopters in the airport's vicinity, as well as guiding planes that were landing. This is one of the busiest fucking airports in the world. They are flying dignitaries basically in and out, right? It's a hub. It's a major international hub. And you got one person pulling double duty. Like, what the fuck? Question mark. Investigators concluded a single person was doing a job meant for 2. The findings are seemingly in line with the years-long problem that has plagued the U.S. aviation industry, a shortage of air traffic controllers. The FAA stopped short of blaming the controller or anyone else for Wednesday's tragedy. But the Times noted the double duty of handling choppers and airliner traffic can increase the workload and complicate the job. Okay, well, then you throw in this kind of rogue helicopter, which all of a sudden gets the transponder switched on as it goes over this strange mystery point in McLean, Virginia, where the house that it's passing over is blurred out and every other house on Google Maps is visible. Okay, you could have 5 people involved in the air traffic control situation, and they may not be able to deal with what happens with that transponder getting turned on. And all of a sudden, that plane the helicopter responding to it, and next thing you know, you've got a derivation of the course. Okay, so the pilot was going to be married. That sucks. That fucking sucks. Audio obtained by the Daily Beast captured communication between the tower and the doomed American Airlines jet, Bombardier CRJ 700. That was arrived from Wichita, Kansas. The air traffic controller can be heard asking the helicopter, Pat 25, do you have the CRJ in sight? The tower then directed the helicopter to go behind the jet, saying Pat 25 passed behind the CRJ. It doesn't happen. What happens? It hits the fucking plane in the nose. Tragedy would strike moments later with the plane's radio transponder ending transmission about 2,400 feet short of the runway. In the control tower, a woman can be heard gasping and saying, oh my God, right? 15 seconds later, someone radios in, Tower, did you see that? The Times reports that the tower at Reagan Airport has been understaffed for years. It was nearly a third below targeted staff levels as of September 23rd. It is unclear if staffing was beefed up in the year and a half since then, but there is no public evidence that suggests that there has been a hiring wave to fill the gaps. The Times reported that most workers at the tower work up to 6 days a week and 10 hours a day. These people are being overworked in highly stressful jobs that compromise their ability to make rational, logical decisions in real time under great, moments of stress and pressure. Let me see if I can go back and find this thing that I ran across. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can track it down. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to bring this up here. Now, I don't know how much this is going to keep in mind the 2 Chinese nationals on that flight, right? Just bookmark that thing. Also, keep in mind this Doug Burgum and this sale of this avionics equipment to China, who alters it, sends it back to Honeywell. All right, bookmark that as well. Okay. I gotta find this thing. Just give me a second. Yeah, Blackhawks can be flown by remote control. That is true. Absolutely. Let's try and find it. I wish I'd saved it. If I can't find it within a reasonable amount of time, I'll just move on. But I should be able to. Okay. Search. Okay. I apologize for this. This is my last stab at this thing. All right, if I find the link to the to this story with the FAA, I'm going to put it in the comment section. Yeah, okay, here it is. I found it. This is going to blow your mind. This is going to fucking blow your mind. I think when we step back and take an assessment of all this, the damage and the carnage done by DEI and ESG and these policies that have been put in place to hire people who have no business doing the jobs that other people who are more qualified and better suited for those jobs don't get a chance at. We're going to look back in this period of time and we're going to view it with absolute insanity. Like there was a schizophrenic break that the country and the rest of the world had. We had a schizophrenic break. And in that schizophrenic break, these people who were promoting this idea were allowed to seize power and then put these people who were far lesser qualified in place. Why? Because the other part of us was dealing with other things, trauma, working on our lives, right? Trying to keep our heads together. Meanwhile, the fucking lunatics are running the asylum. I'm going to show you, this is the story that I'm talking about. Okay? FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. Let's see if we can get some audio on this right here. 34 seconds. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of the header there. Let's
Got you on video, bitch!
The Federal Aviation Administration is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out in the agency's website. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. So just keep this in mind. They're not saying, hey, because you have these things, we're not going to exclude you from a potential pool of hirees. No, what we're going to do is we're going to actively recruit you. They include hearing, vision. Oh, you got a hearing problem? No problem. Come be an air traffic controller. What? What? Copy? What? Partial paralysis. Complete paralysis. You can be somebody in a wheelchair and you're a quadriplegic, but as long as you can have a stick attached to your forehead, you can work for the FAA. You can be an air traffic controller too. Like, clearly, some of these are going to be administrative jobs. I get it. Right? But once you open up Pandora's box, you can't close it. What else? Epilepsy. Oh, great. Let's have an air traffic controller have an epileptic fit while they're. Did you take your medication? Oh, shit. Well, you're going to pull a 10-hour shift today. I know. That should be good as long as it's not too stressful. And, every time that light over on Runway 5 goes off, I have to look in the other direction. I'm good. Psychiatric disability. Wow, that is a really, really, really broad definition. And dwarfism. We can't leave the dwarfs out. John, can you make sure that Ray gets the special chair? The special chair that we had built at $25,000 to accommodate, his condition that we really can't say anything about. I think we got it in the back somewhere. Can you roll that out for him? The initiative is part of the FAA's Diversity and Inclusion Hiring Plan, which claims diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring what the fuck? Safe and efficient travel across our nation. You're going to hire people based on DEI because somehow that's going to make it safer and more efficient. What is more efficient about it? And again, I'm not opposed to hiring people with disabilities, right? I am not an ableist. But in order to ramp people up who are disabled, and there's a wide degree of disabilities here, right? You're going to have to spend extra amount of time and effort and maybe retrofitting equipment, whatever they're doing, in order to accommodate what they're going to do. Now, how efficient is that? To me, the most efficient thing would be you hire the best person available for the job to do with as little ramp-up time and training because they have it all already and they have all their faculties. And we don't care what color they are. We don't care what sex they are, right? Just be able to do the fucking job. The FAA's website shows the agency guidelines diversity were last updated on March 23rd, 2022. Who was president of the United States on March 23rd, 2022? Joe Biden. Who was the guy that was in charge of all this? Pete Buttigieg. The FAA, which is over. What do you expect from a guy who, when he was mayor of what's it called, South Bend, Indiana? When he was mayor of South Bend, Indiana, which when he was mayor, it was called South Bend over Indiana. When he was mayor of South Bend, he bought a fleet of garbage trucks, brand new, spanking new, efficient, shiny garbage trucks. The only problem is that South Bend, Indiana, has a number of alleys where businesses will put their trash. Well, Mayor Pete didn't figure out that these brand new garbage trucks were too wide for the fucking alleys. They were useless. He couldn't even run a city. And now you're putting him in charge of the Department of Transportation, and the FAA is in there? 45,000 people? The FAA grounded all 737 MAX 9 planes after this. This is this thing where this, I guess, part of the plane gets blown out. I don't know if this is an FAA deal, or a Boeing deal. Boeing's got its own issues. Let's just play them. Look at this. Fucking door blows off the plane. That was last year.
This wasn't even the emergency door. We're at the end of the plane, so the emergency door is right there.
Now, I don't know if that's an FAA issue or if that's a Boeing issue, but it's an issue. You see this? This guy who was pardoned by Trump. 2 J6ers are now dead since they've been pardoned by Trump. Both of them were killed. The FAA added it would increase its oversight of Boeing. See, it's a Boeing. They're following the incident, including auditing Boeing. Boeing was doing the same thing. Boeing was on the same kind of DEI, ESG protocol, and they're hiring people that are unqualified. And the FAA is doing the same thing. So you're hiring unqualified people, but then you're hiring unqualified people to be in charge of the oversight. Does that make sense? The DEI rot in the airline industry is way worse than you think. Daily Wire commentator Matt Walsh wrote in an op-ed last week. Critics of such commentary push back on the argument that prioritizing DEI has made traveling less safe with civil rights groups, slamming Musk, for example, for the aberrant and pathetic tweet. On the FAA's website, the agency claims that people with severe mental and physical disabilities are the most underrepresented segment in the federal workforce. So what? Like, why the fuck do we have to cater to people who are having personality disorders and intellectual issues, meaning that they're just not smart enough? Or maybe their thinking is like cross-wired. I mean, this is huge, right? Like, we're going to find out over the next 6 months how bad this shit under Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George Soros, and all these other absolute fucking traitors has been. We saw it with Karen Bass in Los Angeles, right? Like, that was on full display. That didn't make your jaw drop. I don't know what will. And it's just going to keep happening. We're going to see and that's why these companies now are dropping all this DEI shit. Right? They're dropping it like a hot potato, except for Costco. Costco knows you got people by the balls. Yeah, go ahead, drop Costco shit. Let's see. We're not going to let go of our DEI policies. You know what's funny? And again, look, anybody can be anybody. I don't give a shit, right? But if you're going to have something that's as sensitive as flight safety, which most of the public are going to participate in, you better damn well have the best people involved. right? Like, and I'll even go so far as to say, let's say you're a lesbian, but you're really fucking good at your job. I don't care, right? Like, if you're really fucking good at your job and you're a lesbian, I don't care. If you're better than everybody else at what you do, you're hired, right? That's what a meritocracy is about. But if you're hired just because you're a lesbian and they need more lesbians or they need more queers inside of some position to fill a quota or to make sure the diversity requirements are fluffed up, then that's wrong, right? If you happen to be black and you're the best at what you do, God bless you, you get hired, right? But enough of this bullshit, and we're going to see the carnage. We're going to see the damage that this thing has been doing to us. And not a moment too soon to wake up from this fucking mess. All right, so there's this other piece that I saved you. And this gets back to this idea that there's something else going on in the midst of this giant clusterfuck of this event, right? Where all these things are starting to converge in very weird ways. And some of them are connected and some of them are not connected. All right, so I'm going to show you this. I just found it. All right, so all right, this is part of the high scrimmage, and this is 50 seconds. So this is Joe Ellis, and now Joe Ellis comes into the mix. This is the person who's transitioning, and is a Blackhawk helicopter pilot. So this person was being accused of being the pilot, but was not. But still, nonetheless, we get a peek behind the curtain. So let's take a peek behind the curtain.
Interesting morning. This is Joe Ellis. I am a Blackhawk pilot with the Virginia Army National Guard. I understand some people have associated me with the crash in DC, and that is false. It is insulting to the families to try to tie this to some sort of political agenda. They don't deserve that. I don't deserve this. And I hope that you all know that I'm alive and well, and this should be sufficient for you all to end all the rumors. I also have a statement. The Department of Defense is responsible for casualty notifications. There were no Virginia National Guard personnel on that Blackhawk that collided with the jetliner Wednesday evening. Thank you.
Okay. So Joe, and it's supposed to be Joe as in J-O. Joe Ellis is clearing her name because people were associating this person was talking about their story and transitioning from a male to female, and also moving into becoming a Blackhawk helicopter pilot. So what's weird about this? Again, it's a peek behind the curtain. Now, is Joe Ellis a kick-ass motherfucking Blackhawk helicopter pilot? I don't know, maybe. But, and I brought this up the other day, you know, what happens when a person, like Joe Ellis, for instance, what happens if they're not getting like their normal dosage of estrogen? Or let's say their dosage of estrogen is compromised. And then Joe Ellis has to do something that is critical in nature. And then all of a sudden, they're on the kind of the estrogen elevator, right? And they're not able to fully function in their job. It's quite possible that this can happen because there are factors inside the human biology of that individual that have to be maintained and sustained by a third party, constant testing to make sure that those levels allow Joe Ellis to operate something at a sufficient and efficient manner. It's body chemistry. You get it out of whack and people do not function properly. It's like, that's part of this thing, right? That's totally part of this thing. Again, it's coming up. It's weird. Kevin Sorbo asked, there were 3 people on the helicopter. Why do we still not have? And again, this is all Aquarian shit too, right? Like the weird high strain for the skaters and Nancy Kerrigan showing up on the day that this plane crashes, right, on Twitter. And then Tanya Hardy, and then Nancy Kerrigan, and then Dick. Like, it's just fucking weird. And then now you have Joe Ellis having to come out and make a statement because somebody found Joe Ellis's story. Because Joe Ellis was writing about transitioning and what it felt like and all this other, and again, all this is really Aquarian. When you get into like the whole trans world, it's really a very Aquarian kind of, dialogue. Because Aquarius is different. Right? It's like, well, of all the signs, I think Aquarius is probably the most asexual. Especially the air signs. It's the most asexual. Anyway, that's just my opinion. There's something, I wanted to find it. And I think I still might have it up here. In my headlines. Give me 1 second. Okay, so somebody brought up. I wish I had the tweet. Here it goes. I found it. All right, so I'm gonna bring this up, bring it back into the conversation, and then we're gonna circle back to the whole skating thing, and then I'm gonna play you something else to give you kind of a different perspective here. All right, so this is Jay Davidson, I guess, Jay Anderson, exclusive Google whistleblower of the DC Blackhawk collision incident. This looks like an assassination attempt. So this is Zach Voorhees. I think this is the guy that got in trouble with Google and got kicked out of Google. He says, I expect the list of whoever's on that plane to be very, very interesting. Let's just play a little of this. I'm not going to play the entire 5-minute segment. And I hope I have audio. So here we go.
We do have a major incident that just took place over Washington, D.C. A Blackhawk helicopter colliding with an American Airlines passenger plane with 64 people on board. This entire incident is being picked apart online. There are a lot of questions surrounding this event. So before we get into the primary reason for the talk, this is breaking news. What are your thoughts on this incident?
I think it was deliberate. With a bunch of other stuff, it just seems that it's over and over and over deliberate. Look, the airspace is not like a driving space, which is 2D. Airspace is 3D. The chances that two things collide in midair is actually very, very low. When I watched the video, it just looked like the helicopter was deliberately heading towards the airplane. Looks like it was some sort of an assassination attempt. And so I would expect that the flight list on who was on that airplane is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, do you think they're going to delay the release of that? Do you think they're going to hold on to that for as long as they can? Because there's already public outroar to get that list out.
Usually with these things, they release fake information that contradicts itself over and over and over again. Drip, 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 drip. And then maybe, a couple of years from now, they'll give us a disclosure. But
okay, so he's saying that this is a targeted hit. I would agree with that. And I would invite you to go back and look at the list that we do have and circle 2 Chinese nationals. 2 Chinese nationals. Those are the 2 people on board that plane I'm most interested in. The third, or the other person, would be the third person on the helicopter. Maybe it's the flight instructor. Maybe all 3 of them are just part of the mission. But remember, that is a gold cap, Pat 25, Blackhawk, reserved for special flights for military command and heads of state. So circle one person in the Blackhawk, 2 Chinese nationals, possibly the group of hunters, because that's so random. Right? You could have, people like fucking Dick Cheney like to hunt, right? Like it could be anybody, in that group, and that's only half the list. All right, so let's put all this together now. Okay, we have what's going on at a hiring level with the FAA, Pete Booty Plug, and then just the high strange that goes along with that, right? You bring Boeing in. Boeing going through the same thing. Stories of people not even being remotely qualified, having to literally be trained on the job just so Boeing can hit their ESG marks. That's part of the story. This weird piece with Doug Burgum and these anti-collision components sold to China. China retrofits them, more than likely, and then they either sell them and send them back to Honeywell, who then installs them into Blackhawks and airplanes. Oh. Then you have this weird transponder occurrence happening in McLean, Virginia, as the helicopter passes right over the area. The transponder gets locked on, clicked on, and then the house is blurred out on Google Maps. Like, okay, now we're dealing with a lot of very random, strange components all coming into this event. And then you have all this weird shit with the ice skating stuff, which I think is separate, right? But it's still very weird. Then you've got like the Kobe Bryant thing and the helicopter and the Eagles, and you've got Runway 33 and the flame being diverted from, Runway 1, where if it's on Runway 1, it doesn't have the crash, to Runway 33. This is just getting fucking crazy, right? And where are we? We're 31st of January. So I think there are lots of different things happening. Like if you're looking for one thread that connects the entire event and says, aha, I don't think you're going to find one single thread. But what you will find is you'll find a lot of random things all happening simultaneously, some of which are leading into this idea that something happened here, right? And that helicopter went from being a helicopter to being a missile. And as a result of that, whoever was on that plane was never meant to land. They were not meant to land on that runway. Quite possibly one person, possibly, in the helicopter. But I'm going with the plane. I'll start with the 2 Chinese nationals, and then we still have the rest of the list, right? The skating club is so unfortunate. Let me just see if I can find this one thing. Hold on. Let's see if I can find this. Dick Button. I'm pretty sure that there was another flight where skaters died, and Button had to report on that. Even if I don't find it, the whole thing with Dick Button is just, it just, in a weird way, just ties it all together. And this this Tanya Harding, it is fucking weird. You know what I realized about Tanya Harding too? Tanya Harding is a Scorpio. And let me see if I can get this up here. Tanya Harding's a Scorpio. And what did she do? She got other people to do her heavy lifting, right? Like she had those two losers. What was his name? Jeff Gillooly, who was her boyfriend, and Shane Stant. Like she got them to do the dirty work. Do you know who else did the same thing to do the dirty work? This guy right here. Guess who shares the same birthday as Charles Manson? If you guessed Tanya Harding, you were right. Like, can we get any fucking weirder? It wasn't Tanya Harding that took that wrench and cracked it across Nancy Kerrigan's shin. It wasn't Charles Manson who supposedly went to Cielo Drive and supposedly did what happened there. No, it was other people. Isn't that interesting? More high strange. More high strange for you. So I'm going to play you a video here. And it comes from another Scorpio, Terence McKenna. And this is exactly what McKenna is talking about all the way back in 1988, right? And we have reached this point of acceleration and novelty that McKenna's talking about. Just by this one event, this one air crash, with all these disparate threats, including this weird thing going on with Harding and Button and Kerrigan and the Boston Skate Club, and the whole nine, right? And then it's just all like part of this massive cascade of all these various inputs of high strange. And this is what Terence McKenna said in 1988. And this is where we are and where we're going, and ultimately where we wind up. Take a listen. I'll play it more than once. Pay attention. We are now at the beginning of the acceleration of novelty, which takes us into the event horizon of ascension. And I'm not using that term in a new age sense. You'll when you hear McKenna talk about this, you'll understand what's going on here.
Only going to get weirder. The level of contradiction is going to rise excruciatingly, even beyond the excruciating present levels of contradiction. So I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. And finally, it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. And at that point, novelty theory can come out of the woods, because eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's just too nuts. It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. I look for the invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, possible human immortality, and at the same time, appalling acts of brutality, genocide, race baiting, homophobia, famine, starvation, because the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed. The collapse of the socialist world, the rise of the internet, these are changes so immense, nobody could imagine them ever happening. And now that they have happened, nobody even bothers to mention what a big deal it is. The mushroom said to me once, it said, "This is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse." And that's what we have, the fire in the madhouse at the end of time. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. The entire destiny of all life on the planet is tied up in this. We are not acting for ourselves or from ourselves. We happen to be the point species on a transformation that will affect every living organism on this planet at its conclusion.
So what McKenna is saying, especially when you look at this event is riddled with contradictions. Riddled with contradictions. And it's got so much what the fuck factor that it's just leaning into everything that he's talking about there. Right? It's just leaning into it. So we're at this point of hyperacceleration. And what he's saying is that it gets to a certain point, right, and then it stops. Like there's no more novelty. There's nothing that happens after that. But then the species itself is no longer rooted in this dimension. He says goes to the stars. I'll transpose a little bit, rooted to this dimension. So if we take all that into account, right, we're on this journey of hypervelocity now. And it's only going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. And some of these things we'll look at, we'll say, okay, well, this can be fixed and this can be fixed, but this can't be fixed. So we just need to leave it behind. But my sense is that this is going to happen so quickly that it's going to be almost impossible to fix any number of things in the system. Like just look at the last 4 years and the damage that's been done by these hiring practices, right? To fix those practices, first of all, to root all those people out. Secondly, you're going to have to find more qualified people. Thirdly, you're going to have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. This takes time. There's going to be lawsuits, all kinds of stuff, right? So it's not like you can just wave a wand and overnight, like it's all going to be, back to, 1990, where the best and the brightest were hired, the most qualified people were the ones doing the jobs, right? This is like turning a fucking aircraft carrier around in the ocean. That said, once you go down that path, something else happens. It's like, oh, well, let's fix this. Something else happens. Let's fix this. Something else happens, right? This is where we're at now. And for a lot of people, it's just going to, it's going to blow their minds. A lot of people are going to lose their shit because they just can't keep up with it. Most of you have been pretty good, I think, at dealing with chaos. Well, more chaos on your way. More chaos on the plate. Do I think McKenna got everything right? No, not really. But I think he got this part right. Because that's where we are. And we can just look at the last week. We had Mercury, Sun, Pluto, Moon, right? All in Aquarius. It's like a freaking portal. Like we just stepped through this major portal, and whatever this thing with this crash, it just accelerated something massively accelerated it. And some of it can be understood, tracked. There may be some culprits involved. We may find out. Some of it is just completely and utterly unanswerable. And that's where McKenna comes into play. How long is it going to take? I don't know. We could be going through this for a decade. So Pluto goes into Pisces. And then we return to source or something like that, right? Or we return to source with Pluto and Aries. We come to that point where the entirety of human evolution as we know it stops, but something else occurs. In the meantime, we're here now, and so there are things to take care of, and I have some things to take care of. Just in terms of our sponsor of the show, which is True M Science, which will help you get through these times. I'm telling you, go to truemscience.com, check out Chris's excellent CBD products. He's got some new gummies coming out. I get to R&D them, hopefully in the next week or so. And so look forward to those. They're coming. They're on the way. Go to truemscience.com, spend $100 or more, and you will get your goodie bag, which is your order within an order. $150 more gets you free shipping. There's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. TrueHemScience.com, 15MINS is your code. Now, my next shout-out is I do not get compensated for this. So this is not a quote-unquote sponsor, but it is a friend, and I wanted to support my friend and what he's doing because I think he can actually be of assistance here. So the friend that I'm referring to is our good friend Masaki Miyagawa, or M2, as I like to call him. Masaki has just launched his crypto consulting business. And I told him that I would give him a shout out. So let me see if I can find the link to his crypto world. I'll find it real soon. So if you're interested in navigating the rising tides of cryptocurrency, Masaki's your guy. He's already working with some people that are a part of this world. I'm just trying to find his website. Hold on. And again, I'm not getting anything out of this. I believe in his ability to navigate, because it's not easy, right? Like it's gotten even harder. You know, on ramping, off ramping, knowing when the bubbles are, knowing when the pumps are happening, knowing when the dumps are happening. You know, and one of the things that Masaki does is that he is very good at understanding the crypto cycles, but he also throws in, here we go, he also throws in some other vectors of information. So let me just grab this URL. And if you are interested in working with him on the crypto tip, I highly recommend it. He's your Sherpa. And I think if you're not exploring it for at least a limited period of time, you're missing out on an opportunity. So there you go. It's Masaki.1. And you can just book a consultation with him, right? Plays with some numerology and stuff. And I can attest to you that our guy, Masaki, has done quite well in the crypto world. So he knows of which he speaks. All right, that's it. If you want to get a reading with me, you can do that at robertreadings.com. Buy me a cup of coffee if you like as well. That's a link inside of the chat. And we'll be back on Sunday night. We'll be talking more astrology. I'm really interested in this Tanya Harding, Charles Manson personality connection through Scorpio. I find that shit fascinating. All right, chat, thank you. Mods, thank you. Chachar, you're the best. Treat each other well. Love to you all. God bless, and bye for now.